Russian jet aircraft entered Estonian airspace, where they remained for approximately 12 minutes. 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets violated Estonian airspace. NATO fighter jets responded, and the Russian aircraft were forced to flee. Such a violation is completely unacceptable. The Estonian government has decided to request consultations under Article 4 of NATO. The Russian aircraft operating over the Gulf of Finland had their transponders turned off and did not respond to any communications. An extreme form of provocation, which is related, among other things, to gathering information about NATO systems and procedures, all of which is being done with a view to possible aggression. Estonia was right to request consultations under Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty, and Poland should support this request. But Russia should also remember that when it engaged in similar provocations on Turkish territory some time ago, Turkey, also a NATO member, did not invoke any articles, but simply pressed the buttons. The missile flew, and the Russian plane crashed. The President of the United States has spoken out on the intrusion of Russian MiGs over Estonia.
I don't love it. I don't like it when that happens. It could be big trouble.
The Kremlin has been using provocations against NATO countries for a long time. The actions consistently carried out by the Russian Federation, which are technically called provocations, are in fact a scenario for waging hybrid warfare that has been consistently implemented with iron precision for many years. Vladimir Putin is clearly taking a harder line. These provocations can be understood as part of negotiations with Donald Trump, as a strategy to show that he is tough and decisive. However, the community of free nations has a duty to treat this as preparation for war and to respond appropriately. But that's not all, because Russian fighter jets also flew 150 meters from a Polish drilling platform in the Baltic Sea, 70 kilometers from the Polish coast. 2 Russian Air Force fighter jets flew low over the Petro-Baltic drilling platform. The services responsible for Poland's security are constantly monitoring the situation within critical maritime infrastructure, including outside Polish territorial waters. There is no doubt that the Kremlin, through its actions, including the recent drone attack on our country, is implementing a plan to provoke and test NATO countries. This is a systematic way of waging war against Western countries. Poland and other NATO countries are defined as adversaries, and Poland is defined as a target for offensive actions by the Russian Federation. Let us remember, and I always remind people of this and will continue to do so, that the Russian Federation is practicing nuclear attacks, for example on Warsaw, and has practiced them repeatedly during Zapad exercises. According to experts, what has been happening recently is nothing more than testing and gathering information about the defense systems of Poland and other countries on NATO's eastern flank. The Russian Federation's strategy of aggression against the Baltic states is being written and updated on an ongoing basis. This provocation against Poland is also closely linked to our special role both in the Baltic Sea and on NATO's eastern flank. Russia is testing the security system of our allies. Russia is constantly provoking and crossing new boundaries. That is why our actions must be decisive. First of all, we must arm ourselves. We must increase our anti-drone protection, and we must modernize our air defense system. Polish aviation is also regularly disrupted by Russian attacks on Ukraine. This was also the case this morning. The operation of Polish and Allied air forces in our airspace has been terminated due to the cessation of long-range airstrikes by the Russian Federation on Ukraine. The activated ground-based air defense and radar reconnaissance systems have returned to standard operational activity. Our actions were preventive in nature and aimed at securing the airspace in areas adjacent to the threatened area. Also due to recent Russian provocations, NATO launched the Eastern Guard mission to strengthen its eastern flank. Danish F-16 fighter jets and French Rafale jets, among others, are to operate as part of this mission. This is because the recent attack by Russian drones has exposed the weakness of the country currently ruled by Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk.
Obowiązkiem państwa polskiego.
It is the duty of the Polish state and Polish politicians, but also of Polish citizens, to be aware of this and not to allow the Russian Federation to achieve its political and military goals, because they are intertwined. Because so far, the current Polish government has been rather embarrassing itself, as in the case of Marcin Bosacki, Polish deputy head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who used disinformation at the UN Security Council. There simply has to be decisive pressure on the government to behave in a fully professional manner, so that state structures, including the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, stop clowning around and get on with their professional work for the security of the Polish state. To begin with, it would be appropriate for Tusk's government to reach an agreement with Polish President Karol Nawrocki, so that a real Polish ambassador finally appears in Washington, D.C. The morning scramble of Polish aircraft was a response to events in Ukraine. In a statement published on Telegram, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reported that Russia had launched 580 drones and 40 missiles targeting Ukraine's infrastructure, civilian manufacturing enterprises, and built-up areas in various regions of the country. I was awakened by a loud explosion. I was covered in glass shards from broken windows. I grabbed my child, who was also covered in glass, and we started to run. The missiles and drones struck Lviv, Khmelnytsky, Ivano-Frankivsk, Vinnytsia, Kiev, Zaporizhia, Poltava, Kharkiv, Sumy, and Dnipropetrovsk regions. An air raid alert was declared in Kiev and many other regions. According to a social media post by the head of the regional administration in Dnipro, apartment buildings, private houses, and commercial buildings were damaged. When the explosion went off, we ran outside. An apartment in the neighboring building was on fire. And this dog is our friend. When the Shaheeds fly in, he barks at them. He jumps on the windowsill and barks as loud as he can. Of course, when the explosion happens, he's not so brave anymore. I saw despair on the faces of the residents. I saw tears. I saw enormous tension. They were very scared. I grabbed my backpack because it was by the door and left in what I was wearing at 6 a.m. That's how I ran outside. The shockwave literally hit me in the face. Each such attack is not a military necessity, but a deliberate strategy by Russia to terrorize the civilian population and destroy our infrastructure. That is why a strong international response is needed. Ukraine has proven that it can defend itself in Europe, but to create a reliable shield, we must act together, strengthen air defenses, increase arms supplies, and expand sanctions against the Russian war machine. In response, Ukrainians attacked 2 oil refineries in Saratov and Novokuybishevsk in Russia, and an oil pumping station in Samara with drones. These facilities were used for the needs of the Russian army. Ukrainian forces regularly attack Russian facilities with drones in response to Russia's war against Ukraine. The targets are military, energy, and oil infrastructure, which are important sources of income for Moscow. Chaos at many European airports. Airports in Berlin, Brussels, and London were paralyzed. A cyber attack shut down the check-in system that serves hundreds of thousands of passengers a day. People were left waiting for flights delayed by many hours, and most of them were cancelled anyway.
6 o'clock news on the radio, I heard the announcement that there was some trouble because of a cyber attack. So I already knew there would be probably some delays. We were not informed yet about how much delay there would be, but in the meantime, I've now heard that it will be about 3 hours that our flight will depart later.
From early morning, huge queues of stranded and confused passengers formed at airport terminals. I got here at 9:15. No information. They just said there was some technical fault. I looked on the internet and there were writing about a cyber attack on airports. Among others, Europe's largest airport, London Heathrow, which handles up to 200,000 passengers a day.
It's a problem because we have an old program, and maybe, I don't know if it's correct 2 hours, but I'm in trouble. I don't know how to do, but all people are all the same here.
Airport employees had to switch to manual passenger check-in, which significantly lengthens and complicates the entire process.
cyberattaque, ça impacte Brussels
A
Airport.
cyber attack took place last night on one of our technology providers, which affected the operation of our airport, as well as many others in Europe. It has been going on for many hours, and the problem has not been resolved. This means that passenger service is being delayed. Some flights will be delayed, and others will be canceled. The hackers who attacked the check-in, boarding, and baggage handling systems knew exactly what they were doing.
This is not common at all. Collins Aerospace, who have been affected by this cyber attack, is one of the biggest aviation and defense companies in the world, employing over 80,000 people. And it's deeply worrying that a company of that stature, who normally have such resilient systems in place.
Experts do not rule out that these are hostile Russian actions, possibly also supported by China, aimed at destabilizing and causing chaos in large population centers. Currently, in the era of broadly understood hybrid warfare, we can assume that this was a joint operation, like Chinese-Russian or purely Russian, but using Chinese servers to hide the source of the attack. The attacks did not affect Polish airports. It may take the entire weekend to restore normal air traffic in Brussels, London, and Berlin. Tens of thousands of people may gather at State Farm Stadium in Arizona to say goodbye to Charlie Kirk. Among them will be leading representatives of the U.S. administration, Vice President J.D. Vance, and President Donald Trump.
Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. Charlie was also a man of deep, deep faith.
Sunday's event is under the highest possible security from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Local and state law enforcement agencies are providing the security. Law enforcement agencies are warning of extremists who may be planning attacks during the memorial service.
The evildoers responsible for my husband's assassination have no idea what they have done. They killed Charlie because he preached a message of patriotism, faith, and of God's merciful love. But they should all know this. If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have no idea what you just have unleashed across this entire country and this world. You have no idea.
Charlie Kirk's funeral will take place on Sunday at 11 a.m. local time in the U.S. or 8 p.m. Polish time.